Good morning. Good morning. My name is my name is Chidinma Chidoka, and I serve as the Executive Director of Athena Centre for Policy and Leadership. I'm currently a PhD candidate at the Howard University in Washington, D.C., where my research focuses on governance, institutional reforms, and the role of public policy in advancing inclusive development. At Athena Centre, our work is grounded in a simple but demanding principle. Serious social progress must be measurable, evidence-based, and institutionally grounded. So what does that mean? For especially for what we're talking about today, too often conversations around women's rights remain at the level of aspiration. Today's discussion asks a more difficult question. How do we translate commitments into measurable outcomes within our institutions, our communities, and public policy frameworks? We're live right now on YouTube and on Facebook if you're joining from there. Thank you for being here with us. Today's session is titled Beyond the Conversation and Building Practical Safety and Support Systems for Women in Nigeria. We're looking for how to turn women's rights into measurable actions. We're going to be keeping this tight and we're going to keep it practical. Now, before we begin, I would just like to say, since we're talking about a very sensitive issue, we do not want to share names or identifying details. And we'll keep our discussion focused on systems and solutions. As much as we like storytelling, we want to keep it focused on systems and solutions. Now, let me set the frame for this conversation and what makes it different this year. For too long, many women and girls, their safety depends on luck. When I say luck, their safety, especially after they have survived after they have survived violence, it depends on who they know, who they have access to, basically luck. The systems are not in place for everybody, and we're looking for how to create a system that works for every woman and every girl. It shouldn't depend on where you live. It shouldn't depend on who you know. It shouldn't depend on who, if the person is compassionate, whoever you meet, if they're compassionate, it shouldn't depend on that. It shouldn't depend on if there's a clear referral pathway. It shouldn't also depend on if help arrives on time. These are all the factors and variables that affect or that can affect what happens to a woman when she reports that she has been a victim of gender-based violence. So this is not a system, this is chance. So this year we're being very honest about the reality ahead. Another reality ahead for us is that the financing environment keeps getting tighter and tighter. Everybody knows what's going on in the world. People are taking back funding. We read a report where the US has taken back about 10 million funding for the UN women. So we cannot also keep depending on projects. Creating a project to keep women safe is important right now for there to be systems in place in organizations, because gender-based violence is not going anywhere. It's going to keep happening. So as institutions, public-facing, community-facing institutions, what's in place when a woman reports that she has been assaulted or attacked or she's a victim of gender-based violence? That's what makes today different. We're not talking about awareness. Awareness is good, but we're not talking about awareness. We're here to build a minimum viable pathway to safety. We're going to be looking at things like what should happen within the first 10 minutes after disclosure. What must never happen because it will increase risk? What are the referral triggers that require immediate action. And then for us as stakeholders in various institutions, what can we all commit to deliver within 60 to 90 days that we can track without exposing those survivors? Remember, we're not here to tell stories. While we listen, I want us all to listen for three things. What can change outcome? What is a minimum standard that must be institutionalized? And what commitment can be delivered and tracked? And for a lot of us, when we registered for this webinar, we were made to take a survey, a 3-minute survey. We're going to share the results of that survey because it will also guide our conversation today. But before we do that, I would love to welcome our panelists that are here. We have, based from our posters, we have a very distinguished group of panelists. And so if I can have the panelists come into the studio, and I will introduce them as they come up. Okay. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you to our panelists. We'll begin with introducing Dr. Mrs. Elsie Noyelu Nwokolo. She is a distinguished pharmacist, an education advocate, and a Christian women leader in Anambra State. She serves as the chairperson of the Women's Wing of the Christian Association of Nigeria and the Christian Council of Nigeria in Anambra State. She's recognized for expanding opportunities for young women while championing community welfare. Dr. Nwokolo, thank you for being here. I would also of Women Affairs State. For Women Affairs in Ogun State, and she leads initiative focused on women empowerment, child protection, prevention of gender-based violence. She's also a former 2-term member of the Ogun State House of Assembly. Honorable Commissioner, thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Ma, and
good morning.
Thank you for having me.
Miss Kemi, Dr. Miss Kemi Okenyodo is a Nigerian lawyer. She's a governance expert and she's a civil society leader. She's also the executive director of the Rule of Law and Empowerment Initiative, Partners West Africa. She's widely recognized for her work on accountable policing, security, governance, and public safety across West Africa. Dr. Mrs. Kemi, you are welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. I'm also very excited to welcome Dr. Sumaye Hamza. She's a Ford Foundation Program Fellow. She's also a retired permanent secretary with the Plateau State government. She has a PhD in education policy analysis from University of London. She's a social justice advocate and she's currently the National Amira of Form 1. Dr. Hamza, we are honored to have you here.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Last for now, but definitely not the least, I am so honored to have you here, Dr. Kabura Zakama. He is a governance and development practitioner with experience in humanitarian coordination and community resilience in conflict-related um, conflict affected regions. His work focuses on strengthening local systems, institutional accountability, practical response mechanisms that protect vulnerable communities, especially women and girls. Dr. Zakama, it is really my honor to have you here. It's
Thank you very much.
in Athena, we have something within our program that we call the male working with us on this. And I'm happy that we are not going to give up we want to raise awareness about gender-based violence, but we also want to find solutions. So you are valuable to this group, and I know that you have a lot to contribute. So
Thank you very much.
I'm going to invite each panelist to speak for 3 minutes. And I would like us to cover some basic things. What is the common system breakdown that you see? What is a factor or a lever within the system that you believe can fix it? What is one minimum viable action that institutions can implement with limited funding? And at the end of this, I would love to know if you had to make a commitment on behalf of yourself and the organization towards creating or finding the minimum viable response to gender-based violence, what would it be? So to get right into it, I think I want to call on the Honorable Minister, the Honorable Commissioner for Women Affairs, Honorable Moturayo Adeleye. And if you would please, what do you think, what is one state level coordination decision that, if taken, will reduce the cases of gender-based violence, case attrition? What I mean is that, those cases that are reported, then nothing happens. What do you think is one state level coordination decision that you took together with your colleagues have been shown to? Honorable Commissioner.
Good morning once again. Permit me to appreciate the Athena Centre for Policy and Leadership for this kind invitation to participate in this all-important dialogue marking this year's International Women's Day. Well, I must commend the organizers for choosing a team that resonates with all of us at this time. This is a team that challenges us to move beyond conversations towards measurable actions that truly advance the rights, dignity, and well-being of women and girls. Well, as the Commissioner for Women Affairs and Social Development in Ogun State, I am deeply aware that the real impact of our advocacy must be reflected in practical policies, programs, and outcomes that transform the everyday realities of women in our communities. In Ogun State, we have taken a lot of steps. At the inception of this second term of His Excellency, the Governor of Ogun State, Prince Dapo Abiodun, we had just one sexual assault referral center, but today we have 4, one per division in the state. And we don't just have this, we have shelter included, so that at least we can give a sort of temporary shelter to victims of gender-based violence who cannot go back home immediately. We know this happens a lot. Well, in my state, when I look around, I know we've done so much, but one of the major things that I think there is need to bring on board is the issue of fast-tracking justice. A situation whereby a perpetrator, is seen walking the streets. Yes, he's still in court, but he's out on bail and he's walking the streets. Even the victim is seeing that perpetrator walking the street. It tends to it's like you putting them through that trauma all over again. It traumatizes them. So I think where we are still sort of is the issue of special courts. If we cannot have a dedicated court, then we can have a designated court. Yes, we might not have enough courts to even attend to all the cases generally. But when we have a designated court, it means on so day, maybe 2 days in a week, this particular court will be seeing to cases that has to do with gender-based violence, child abuse, abuse of persons with disability. And within 6 months, justice has been served. It makes it easier for people to learn from. But coming back to the theme of this dialogue, rightly emphasizes that protecting the promoting women's rights requires deliberate and coordinated efforts in prevention, response, and resilience. Prevention remains the best and the most sustainable approach. We don't have to wait till it happens. We have to nip it in the bud. And this requires continuous investment in education. It requires continuous investment in public awareness, community engagement to challenge harmful social norms and discriminatory practices. We need to work together. Governments must continue to work closely with traditional institutions, faith leaders, civil society organizations, and schools. When you go to our schools these days, you'll be shocked what you see, not just higher institution now. I'm even talking about secondary schools, primary schools. You'll be shocked with what is happening there. The family value has been eroded. There is need for us to go back to the basics. Let's pick it again from the basics and begin to train our children in a new way. Let's begin to train the girl child and the boy child the same way, not the boy child seeing himself as being superior to the girl child. In this regard, legal frameworks such as violence against persons protection and others will have to provide important basis for protecting vulnerable members of the society. Beyond prevention, it is also essential to strengthen response mechanisms when violations occur. And this is one of the reasons why we had to decentralize our sexual assault referral centers. In each sexual assault referral center, you have doctors, you have lawyers, you have security personnel that can swing into action whenever issues like this occurs. Women and girls who experience abuse or discrimination must have access to safe reporting channels. They must have that confidence that if I go and report, I am safe. They must have access to justice. They must have access to comprehensive support services. And that is why we included shelter in our sexual assault referral centers. You know, there are times maybe a father or a stepfather rape a girl child, and the mother reported. The family will come around and say, this woman cannot come back to this house. You are the one that wants to send your husband to jail. In such cases, most times they cannot go back to that home. There is need for them to have a sort of transit home where they can stay for the time being. And something else that we did in Ogun State is to include Women Development Center, which some will call Skill Acquisition Center, in our sexual assault referral centers. So that while the woman is there, while she's trying to get her thoughts together, or while the young lady is there, she has something to empower herself with. So by the time she's leaving the place, because it's not a permanent house, it is just a transit shelter for them. But while they are living, they're already empowered with something. Because one of the things that we have discovered that makes a woman or a young lady to remain in an abusive relationship is lack of economic empowerment. But if you have to stay in the sack, in the shelter, by the time you are leaving, you have been able to learn one skill or the other. And by the time you are leaving, you are empowered one way or the other to face the world on your own. You don't have to stay back because the man is the one that is responsible for your education, because the man is the one that is responsible for the feeding of your children. That is part of what we have done in Ogun State. A responsive system not only supports survivors, but it also enforces society's collective resolve against gender-based violence. In this regard, I you might feel because I am commissioner, but that's not the issue. I must commend the proactive leadership of my governor, because when we wanted to set up the SAC, it was just SAC. But along the line, we discovered that we just have to put in some other things. And as we were taking it to the governor, he bought into it. So today, I can say we are poised, and we have that standing. We have that good standing. We have a couple of children, a couple of young girls who have been abused in our sexual assault referral center under the shelter that we are taking care of. We have some of them in schools.
Okay.
That we are taken out of the abusive environment.
Honorable Commissioner, we'll come back because you have answered so many of my questions, but I'll come back to you on that. And I'd like to bring in Dr. Hamza, Dr. Sumaye Hamza, and I think from your standpoint of being the leader of Form 1 and an education and social justice advocate, I would like to ask you, what is the minimum safeguarding standard that should exist in schools and faith communities to protect women and girls? Dr. Hamza.
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this very important discussion. For me as an educationist, minimum standard in school. At the first instance, when girls or women are abused, they find it very difficult to report because the reporting pattern is not very clear. It is not confidential. And so they withhold and continue to remain in depression and trauma. So what I expect to find in schools is to ensure that the school has a very, very effective counseling center, not just for advice, but for receiving complaints, for receiving input, even from the students themselves, or teachers, or even parents. And such a place should be highly confidential. And such a place must also be linked to referral centers, because the school cannot tackle everything alone. If, for instance, a girl has been violated and she has sustained injuries, the referral pathway must be to the health sector. So schools must have a link to the health sector, so that when such instances happen, the school know where to take the victim to straight, and proper care will be given without any stigmatization. Beside the health centers, the legal unit, for example, the Ministry of Justice. So Ministry of Education should establish a relationship with Ministry of Justice, so that when schools have issues like this, there's a desk in the Ministry of Justice that will be able to handle that. All these are connected together with security, because victim arrest, the perpetrator's arrest will have to be by the security. So even at the security post, police station, there should be a gender desk with a well-trained personnel, well-equipped, very much gender-sensitive officer, so that evidences are not hidden, and so that evidences are not wiped off. Because once the police wipe off evidence, the court or the legal system has nothing to do. It's with evidence they can pass judgment. So that desk in the police post must be sensitized or enlightened enough and educated enough, their capacities enhanced, so that they get the substantial evidence they need to get, in addition to what hospital gets, so the legal system can now work. So the minimum standard that is expected in an educational institution is not limited to the educational institution alone, but it's a network of connectivity. And this effective synergy must be seen to be functional, not just enough to say we have a relationship with Minister of Justice, with the office of the CP. Is not enough. It must be very functional. A responsible officer, for that matter, to be there, so that responsible officer can be held accountable, can give report, can do a follow-up, so that the follow-up mechanism is done by all this group of networks. And of course, the civil society, which is the watchdog, because all other areas mentioned have an inclination with, in one way or the other, with government. The civil society is more neutral. So the partnership with civil society will help in follow-up, will help in ensuring that justice is accomplished. Like the Honorable Commissioner said, you find the victim on the street. Experience has shown us that a case brought before a judge, the judge was waiting for police to give evidence, for example, and then there was no substantial evidence to hold the perpetrator responsible. So there is nothing that can be done than to grant bail or to release. But when there is this network and effective synergy working together, these evidences will not be lost, and therefore action can now be taken.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Hamza. I will definitely come back to you. I will come back to you because I wanted to follow up on something that the Honorable Commissioner said, and so I want to start thinking in terms of social protection. But while you are thinking on that, I will pivot to Dr. Elsie Nwokolo. If she's available, I would like her to talk about the minimum health and safeguarding actions that must happen immediately after disclosure. Okay. Dr. Kemi Okonyedo, if you can tell us what, based on what the Honorable Commissioner has said and Dr. Hamza, what is the minimum accountability mechanism that changes first contact behavior? If you, Dr. Hamza talked about not confidential, naming, so what can we change without naming or shaming and without new laws, especially as it regards the legal environment?
Thank you very much. I would say that first would be mandatory presence or access to justice. And access to justice, mandatory presence or access to justice at first contact. When duty bearers, from experience, we found out that when duty bearers know that there's a lawyer or there's a trained lawyer, a paralegal, or a duty solicitor can intervene early, there is the tendency for them to be more mindful of the way they are processing the complaints. And the accessibility here could be either physical or the legal person is reachable through a structured system. So Dr. Hamza said tried to describe a referral pathway. So even within the referral pathway, if there is a legal person that is easily accessible, we found that it almost always changes the attitude and the way duty bearers interface or collect the complaints. And this is because they become more cautious in a more cautious in the procedural manner and the way they receive the complaint. The second one is documentation. Documentation at first contact. When the process of collecting information at first contact, when arrest is made, when arrest is made, at times when investigation is going on, the way the information and the document and the way information is collated and it's being archived is also very essential. That's where the previous panelists have also spoken to the issue that feeds into the justice sector, case management, the process of investigating, collating the evidence that would be taken to court and would be used by the judge, because it is what is presented before the judge that the judge can use, not what we've heard, not what they said happened. Yes, it happened, but where is the forensic? Where is the evidence that speaks to what is said to happen? So it helps to create a chain, what I think we usually would call it a chain of evidence, that the chain of evidence is not broken because the burden of proof is beyond reasonable doubt, right? Finally, I would say that when we also have routine supervision. So routine supervision means that there is another layer that periodically reviews and looks at what is being done. That can be within the agency, so within the police itself. If I'm using police as one of the duty bearers, it could be within the police that there's a senior officer. It could be oversight, because at times we've worked with traditional institutions and they are also first responders. People go to them at first hand. When they collate, is there a mechanism within the local government structure that allows you to regularly review what they are doing and the complaints they've brought in, how they have documented it, and how they have handled it? And of course, civil society organizations come in here for partnership, because we can also help to strengthen the system. We can also help them to look at the processes and ensure that it's properly managed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that contribution. And it's instructive to me that across all the people who have spoken so far, one thing that has been consistent is justice, access to justice, the speed of justice. But I want us to also bear in mind, we're thinking of what's viable, what is easily accessible. And when I'm thinking of accessible, I wonder about the people in fragile conflict areas. So, Dr. Zakama, if you can speak quickly, like in fragile and low resource contexts, what minimum viable mechanisms actually survive and keep the women safe?
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Chidoka. I feel very honored to be among these wonderful women. I'm not like a proper practitioner, but I have a lot of experience in fragile areas of the Northeast. I myself have witnessed a lot of these things. And I think the common thing I see in the resource challenged or in the high risk areas is that consistently there is no proper institutional preparedness. I mean, the survivors often reach the right places that are closest to them, maybe schools, markets, local government offices, but those areas feel highly unprepared to help. Not because they don't care, but because perhaps the simple, clear, and sustainable tools that we're talking about are not there. So I would like to add my voice again to the fact that we need this minimum viable GBV response desk. And I think the first thing I would recommend is that we must have these focal points. And I know all the speakers have spoken about the focal points, but I'm talking about community level. I'm talking at community level, where you don't see lawyers, where you don't see all the health people, but you just see maybe a small NGO, maybe somebody who is trying to help, somebody who has observed GBV and wants to help. So my proposal will be proper identification of focal persons at the community level, because all the groups are community facing. Therefore, there must be proper community level focal points that are actually trained in the right way. And by that, I mean there are language issues. My experience in the Northeast is I find somebody who learned to speak Hausa and is trying to translate something from English onto communities who speak Kanuri. So I find that the translations doesn't go through. They don't understand the spirit of the words that are used or the linguistic dynamics that are involved. The Kanuri man doesn't care for the Hausa language. So when you go and you're translating into Hausa for them, I have evidence that their understanding or their even sometimes ability to listen is limited. So we need to really do proper training beyond the GBV issues to the focal points. There's also the issue of psychology. My experience has been that people who are survivors mostly take time to process things. And even though they may come to the point of assistance, we need to have people who will really understand what they want. We need to have people at the response centers who will be able to really culturally understand what should be done. What does the survivor want? I know we have a pack of responses, but is it appropriate in this particular case at this particular time? I also observed in my experience in the Northeast among the local communities, the fact that when you bring a group of women together, they're also different. So sometimes we just say men and women, but amongst the women, there are differences. A married woman whose husband is a chief or whose husband is rich has a different perspective than maybe a divorcee or a widower, and so on. So we don't just deal with the women as a group. We need to also segment, and that needs having serious community-based focal person. So for me, what is critical, that the one thing I came to this discussion with is that focal point must be trained, properly trained, and we must have them in the community as well. I know that in some communities, the vocal people are probably the perpetrators. So, but we must find someone in the community that we can make as a community focal point and provide adequate training for them. The minimum standards we're talking about, we must step it down to the community level, looking at the cultural, linguistic, and psychological markings or makings of that community. And to me, that is the critical thing, the place of local actors. We haven't given them enough agency. It is unfortunate that we have lost that participatory learning and approach that we used to do in the past, where we don't go to inform communities of anything, but we stimulate discussions with them. I work for ActionAid. We used to do PLA, Reflect, Stepping Stones, and we don't go with any solution. You don't go with any idea. You only go with tools to stimulate discussion in the community. So the community focal point is my main focus, so that whatever ideas we have, we can step it down to them, we can adapt it. It doesn't mean that because it worked in community A, it will work in community B. So in conclusion, we must reach out to survivors with respect, clarity, and immediate support that is entrenched in community values. Thank you, Ms. Chidok. Over to you, Ms. Chidok.
Okay. Thank you so much, Doctor. Thank you so much, Doctor Kabura. It's I I particularly I particularly and I particularly relate with what you have said because a lot of the work I do is the issue. Everything you have raised, the language barrier, and even economic, social issues. So, and that's why I want to put it side by side the issue of access to justice. And since we're all stakeholders here, it would be nice to come up with something that, like you said, works for in as much as we cannot do one size fits all, but something that will work for survivors in Abuja and Lagos and Abeokuta, and something that will work for survivors in Mubi or or um, or in a conflict zone, because that's double trauma. You're in conflict, and then a man is, or somebody of the opposite gender is also beating up on you. So if I don't know if Dr. Wokolo has been able to join us. If she has, I would like her to come up. I would like her to come up for her own. But if not, we will go on. So, um, converting. It's time for us to the real work. If I can have everybody on the what? Okay. I don't know. Can all of the panelists hear me?
Yes,
We
I
can.
can hear you.
Okay. Just by way of recap, the Honorable Commissioner of Women Affairs Ogun State talked about fast tracking justice, right? It doesn't feel good when you see your perpetrator walking our last year's webinar, we dealt a lot on the VAP Act and all of the places it has been. Dr. Hamza talked about difficulty in reporting, which is also another real issue. I don't know if everybody can hear me. The difficulty in reporting, and then the fear of what you have said not being confidential, and of course the absence of the referral centers. I think it's brilliant that you talked about the schools having direct, or Ministry of Education having direct access to the Ministry of Justice and the hospitals. Um, and Dr. Koyedo talked about mandatory presence and access to justice. So that is also definitely an issue. Then Dr. Zakama uh, talked about empowering the local actors as first responders, especially in conflict zones. Dr. Wokolo has joined us. I don't know if she's ready to bring her submission before we go into trying to craft our MVRS. Mama Niger, are you ready? I can see her. Okay. All right. So before we got people to take a survey, and we are going to see the results of our surveys. What we have done is that we have just kept it to 5 points. Yeah, 5 signals from the survey, which Sarah is going to share with us right now. After the survey, we'll come back and we'll discuss what we imagine that the NVRS is going to look like.
Hello, can you hear me? Good morning. The voice of Nigerian women across Nigeria on women's safety and gender-based violence. So one of the key insights that we saw from the survey is that there is uncertainty about reporting gender-based violence. Reporting ways are unclear for many respondents. Nearly half of our respondents, 49%, said they don't know where to report or seek help first. So this shows a critical gap in awareness and accessibility of formal reporting channels, meaning that survivors or witnesses may delay reporting or rely on informal options. The second insight that we got is that first disclosure often happens informally. People would rather talk to family members first, and the highest institution that they would go to are faith institutions and then community network rather than going to the police or seeking legal services. This shows that trusted community actors often become the first responders to gender-based cases, even when they are not formally trained. And the implication is that this reliance on informal networks highlights the importance of strengthening community-based entry points and integrating community institutions into response chain, ensuring they know where and how to refer survivors safety. Thirdly, stigma and institutional distrust remain a very big barrier for reporting gender-based violence. But the main barrier that we see is shame and stigma. I mean, there is lack of trust in authorities as shown by our survey. There is also fear of not being believed. There is also family or community pressure. But the biggest barrier is stigma and shame. And these barriers discourage survivors from seeking justice and reinforces silence. Our fourth insight is that first disclosure, okay, no, I've talked about this. Then there is the awareness. Awareness of services are uneven among our respondents. While respondents are aware of services such as police gender desk, helplines, NGOs, and health facilities, a significant number are either unaware or unsure, and this creates a disconnect between existing services and public knowledge. And the implication is that stronger public awareness campaigns and simplified referral systems are necessary. Okay. So, and the last insight for this our survey is that trust is fragmented, leading to pathway breakdown. The survey suggests that different institutions are trusted for different roles. Women organizations and the NGOs are widely trusted to support and also for advocacy. Faith institutions and family members are trusted for first disclosure. Police and legal services are expected to provide formal justice, but they face lower trust levels. Courts and legal services are trusted, but they are perceived as being slow or expensive. So trust is fragmented. People rely on institutions for different needs, and the response pathway often break during the handoff. During handoff. And our conclusion is that this okay, thank you very much. While institution exists, the challenge is that there is only availability. The challenge is not only availability but coordination. The challenge is that trust is fragmented. Thank you.
Dr. Elsie is back. Dr. Wokolo is back back in our webinar, and if she can just come in and give her her submission before we go into crafting of the MVRS. Okay, looks like we lost Dr. Elsie again. If I can have all the panelists back on the screen, please. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Sarah, for the insights. I don't know if we have any thoughts. I don't know if we have any thoughts about what we got from the survey. This survey was taken over the course of the past week, past 7 to 8 days. We had respondents, and based on what Sarah has said, these are the real issues. These are the real issues from real people who have. The first thing is a lot of people don't know where to go. A lot of people don't know where to go. They don't know where to report first. And that is one of the things that we hope that the MVRS will help us specify. Where do you go to first when you want to report an assault? The other thing that stood out to me is how people trust different institutions for different things. So you will go to your pastor's wife, but you don't expect her to take it to the next level. You will go to the police station, but most times, if you go to the police station first, the likelihood of the evidence being tampered with is very high. Now, if you go to your pastor's wife first, or a faith leader, if you approached Dr. Hamza, for instance, what does she do? And I think this ties into what Dr. I'm sorry, sir, Zakama. Yes, this ties into what Dr. Zakama said. The local actors, how are they empowered? There are people that you will go to in a fragile place, and in a fragile context, a conflict area, and she doesn't know what to do. Some people will tell you to pray, some people will clean you up, and maybe they'll keep you away from harm. But back to what Honorable Commissioner said, she doesn't have justice. So what next? So I'm trying to paint a picture so that we understand what we want to achieve here. How do we connect all of these so that somebody who is a victim is able to find justice and healing? So I think that what we want to do now is really the real work, because we have we have given our points, we've given our thoughts. Now the we have what we call the MVRS building blocks, and this is where we convert your points into a one-page minimum standard that institutions can adopt. Ijoma, are you ready for that?
Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us. Okay. You want to share? Okay, so I'll be sharing the minimum viable GBV response standard. So for now, I will briefly introduce the MDRS, and it refers to the minimum set of safeguards that every institution should have in place to respond safely and responsibly to cases of gender-based violence. So and we will be drawing insights from all your contributions to be able to produce this report. So MVRS focuses on ensuring that when a survivor discloses violence, that there is a safe entry point to receive the report, and there is a confidential reporting process, and also a survivor-centered response that prioritizes safety, dignity, and appropriate referrals to support services. So we've been listening to all your contributions, and okay, it's on. Thank you. So this is the minimum viable GBV response standard. So this is more like a summary of what it is. So like I mentioned before, it is the minimum set of safeguards that every organization should have in place to respond safely and responsibly to gender-based violence. So as I mentioned earlier, it focuses on ensuring that when a survivor discloses the violence, that there is a pathway, there is a safe entry point when the report is received, and then there is confidential reporting so that people's stories will not leak out, to avoid stigma and those kind of things. So there is also a survivor-centered response that is given, one that prioritizes safety, dignity, and appropriate referrals to support services. So the core purpose of MVRS is very simple: protect the survivors by ensuring their safety, their dignity, and confidentiality of whatever reports they shared. Then guide institutions as well. We have been able to identify the stakeholders when it comes to GBV responses. So MVRS is there to guide these institutions on how to provide clear very, very clear, because one of the issues we have is people not being able to identify the clear pathway, the clear steps that they are supposed to take, and when they fall victim to GBV. So these institutions, the stakeholders here, they will be able to provide clear minimum steps for responding to GBV in the cases for victims. Then also enable accountability, because when we have steps to take, we need people. PRS ensures that cases are handled responsibly and ethically. So we won't have situations whereby, okay, the victims, yes, they get shelter, they are provided with they are provided with a shelter where they can stay, but then justice is not served. That if there is no justice, then it does not really complete the response, because imagine you having to see your perpetrator smiling and walking. Sometimes they may even be shaming you at the same time. So we need to have all these put in place, and MVRS is there to ensure that we capture all these things. So the elements include, of course, the entry points, the confidential reporting, the first response, the referral triggers, warm referral, making sure that we are able to pass the victim from this particular, so let's say the health aspect, to the legal aspect and to wherever it's supposed to go to. Then, of course, the do no harm is one of the elements of the MVRS, and minimal documentation. There should always be documentations, because, of course, there are some perpetrators that are repeated offenders. So it's good if they have reports like this to go back to. So MVRS ensures that every institution, regardless of the size or the resources, so while we are not targeting only one aspect, even resource limited communities are also targeted. So we have, regardless of the size or the resource of the institution, they should be able to provide a safe first response. So together, all the contributions and insights that has been shared today by our distinguished panelists will help us identify and refine these elements as we work toward defining what a practical and effective minimum viable GBV response standard should look like in practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Joma. I don't know if this is a work in progress, and I would like, why I said this is where the work starts, because what we did was we tried to take quick notes of what everybody's feedback or inputs, but I would like us to further interrogate it, because we're all now from different sectors or backgrounds. I have some certain questions, So if funding, let's say, further tightens, where there is no money, what are the three non-negotiables that every institution must have? So any group must have, every community must have, whether it is the faith-based, or it is the conflict areas, or it is a town, or it is an organization, is the federal ministry. Anybody can answer now. What are the non-negotiables that must be present? Yes, Dr. Konyedo.
First, I'll say I think the definition for justice needs to be clear, because justice for me might not mean justice for the next person. So first, what we understand as justice would help us determine the pathway. So if you remember when I was making my presentation, I said duty bearers. And duty bearers could be formal or informal. And from the feedback from the survey, people tend, and even from experience in the field, people tend to approach the informal first. So we need to be able to come to an agreement without the issues of ethnic religious biases on what is gender-based violence and why it is wrong. Because if these biases are not tackled, as a community and within a system that we have an agreed definition of what is a no-no for us in this community, and I'm using community loosely now, not only physical, even within workspace, within institutions, right? We would be working at cross purposes, and our biases will be playing a role in how we receive and treat complaints that come to our attention. That's number one. Number two, when we talk about duty bearers also, and we say legal practitioners, there's people we call paralegals. And paralegals are people that need to have an understanding of the legal framework. So a traditional ruler, a community leader, a women leader, a religious leader needs to understand what the legal framework of the state where he or she is functioning, what it says, and how it operates. I mean, it doesn't have to be strictly legal, right? But this understanding has to be there. If this understanding is there, it feeds into the first notion of what we know, what we have agreed is a no-no. And I will stop there. No, yes, let me stop there so that my colleagues would be able to put in
Okay.
their points.
Um,
Thank you.
Thank you for the point, but I want to bring your attention back to Dr. Zakama's contributions, where we are talking about, let's think of a remote place in northeast Nigeria. So they may not have the luxury of having a lawyer or a paralegal. And remember, when we're thinking about the MVRS, it has to be minimum viable. So a paralegal may
Yeah,
not be
a
minimum
paralegal
enough.
is not somebody that is, it doesn't necessarily mean somebody that went to school. The community leader, the traditional ruler can be a paralegal. He has to be exposed to what the legal framework says. And that's part of the challenges we have in the work that we do. That when you come to the city, there is awareness. But the further you move away from the city, there seems to be a lack of awareness of the legal frameworks, of the policy frameworks, yet they operate within the states, right? So when I use paralegal now,
Yeah.
I'm not using paralegal as somebody that studied diploma in law. I'm using paralegal as my community leader, right? Who has been, um, who is the traditional ruler, right? But he's not leading blindly. He's leading with tradition, he's leading with the legal framework and the policy framework that exists within that state. Because after all, when he was installed by the governor of the state. The staff of office is from the state. So we must find a way of finding a nexus between what we call traditional, religious, and the formal subnational architecture that
Okay.
brings process into the state. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Hamza, I don't know if you have any. I will come to you, Dr. Zakawa, because I know that I feel like taking I feel like your context or the context where you have experience in should be the minimum. But I would like to hear from Dr. Hamza, based on the survey insights and what we were able to come up with as MVRS. Uh, is there anything that you think could be expanded on or added on, or better still, if you had to write one sentence of what do you think is the minimum viable uh, response standard, um, what would you say?
Yes, thank you very much. Based on the outcome of the survey, I would say that where people have more confidence, but where the confidence is, for example, the faith leader's wife does not have the knowledge of what is expected. I think this tells us that we need to equip them with the knowledge by training them on not to wash, not to clean, because that cleaning is removing the evidence. So they need to know that because they are confident in them, they go there first. So they take them to the nearest public health facility in the community, which in every community now we have primary health care centers. So the confidence that these victims have on the people, be it the faith leader, be it the education uh, service provider, they need to be equipped. So training becomes very, very important on basic fundamental issues.
Okay, so
Thank you.
what I hear you say is when a victim approaches the a faith-based leader like yourself, maybe not at the
Yes,
national level, at a
yes,
community, she or he needs training to
yes,
move that person to the next point, which in your
yes,
opinion is the primary health care center.
yes,
Honorable
before
Commissioner,
cleaning. Yes.
yes. Honorable Commissioner, your input. I think you're muted.
Sorry. I said you cannot underscore the importance of working with traditional and faith leaders and training and retraining them. That in Ogun State will take very important because we have remote areas too. A lot of times we get reports, we get calls from these people. They are the one that would have moved in first, and they know the next thing to do is to get in touch with us. In Ogun State today, we have 5 toll-free lines that we publicize from time to time that you can call. So that even gives a sort of confidentiality. It doesn't have to be you in the middle of the abuse or violence. You might witness it, you might see someone that is going through violence. The person will not even know that you are the one that has called us. You don't have to have credit. All you need to do is to know the number. So you call us and we move in. Now, coming to traditional and faith-based leaders, they have been trained. We train them from time to time. We hold our quarterly meetings. They come, they give us report. They know the next thing to do.
They get in touch with us. If it is somewhere that is too far away, they go to the next health care facility so that they can take evidence before the evidence is eroded. Equally, when it comes to stigmatization, let me give you an example of what we are dealing with at the moment. One of the cases we are dealing with, there is a father who has 5 girls. Their mother is dead. Their mother, the first set, they are twins. 2 girls, 17 years old. The second one is 16. The third one is 15, while the last one is 14. This man has been abusing these children. It was some of the community people that called our attention to it. They called one of our toll-free lines to give us this information, and we moved in. We've arrested the man. The 5 girls are in one of our shelter while we are at the moment working on how to change their school.
So these are part of what we do to reduce stigmatization. It is equally part of why the shelters exist, so that at least for that main time, you can be somewhere where you will not be stigmatized. You can be somewhere where you can be counseled, where they will lead you through, where they can psychoanalyze you and walk this journey with you. Equally, the issue of awareness of services. Yes, a lot of people do not even know these services are in existence. And that is why we will continue to, sensitize our people, go on radio, go on television, and all that. And when it comes to the issue of trust, all you need to do is to put yourself across to the people that you are someone who can be trusted, whether the faith based, whether traditional based, or whether the government itself. You have to be able to convince them when someone has come and the person is convinced that, oh, they can walk this journey with me. It makes it easier for others to come to you. But let me say this. that a lot of times the fight against GBV can be very expensive. For those who are in the rural areas, they will ask them to come to court. They might ask them to come to the capital. A lot of times the police approach us. They don't have vehicle. They don't have fuel. And we have to fund. And that takes me to the final point. There is need for us to have survivors trust fund in all states. If it is possible for us to have it in all our local governments, where people can easily go to pull some sort of fund. A lot of times there is need for immediate, in Ogun State we do multi-sectoral when it comes to GBV. The Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Development provides psychosocial support. 80% of our staff are social welfare officers. So when they come to us. Then we work with health. We know whether it is health that is next, or it is justice that is next, or it is education. So we all work together. At the SAC Center, you have social welfare officers, you have lawyers, you have nurses, if not doctors. So it is multi-sectoral. One sector alone cannot work this journey. We all work together. But the issue of Survivors Trust Fund is very key. GBV war, GBV fight against GBV can be expensive. Times you go to security, they tell you, they are even the ones that we advise perpetrator to go and see how to settle victim's family. They will call the victim family and tell them, you are just wasting your time, nothing will come out of it. Let them go and settle you. They are even the ones that will start shaming the victim, re-traumatizing the victim. Let me just stop here for now because of time.
Okay. I'm very happy that we have the Honorary Commissioner from Ogun State, side by side, Dr. Zakama. Dr. Zakama, what are your thoughts? Because before you speak, I want to remind us that we're looking for something minimum viable. So how do you get safety and healing and justice for victims and survivors with very, 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 very lean resources? I think that's what we're thinking here, and that's because in the landscape of the world that we see today, how we see the world today, for every funding that is cut, for every funding that diminishes, most times the people who, let me say, make a living off of that because of that funding lose it. So let's look at it in that light, and let's think of a woman or a girl or a man for that matter whose safety is dependent on funding. It's reality, but it's not ideal. And the whole purpose of this chat that we're having is how can we create minimum viable that does not. So everything you have said, Honorary Commissioner, is the truth, is the reality. But Dr. Zakama, speak to me from the point of view somebody,
because I was about adding something. Okay, please.
I will come back to you. Speak to me from the point of view of somebody in a fragile conflict area.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Chidoka. I think, first of all, I want to really appreciate the survey that was done. I think it brought out a lot of good things, talking about the uncertainty about reporting channels, the first disclosure to trusted people in an informal way, and then the stigma and shame that is associated with it. I think you're stressing the funding very well, and I think we've missed opportunity. When there was a lot of funding, we could have done things differently to put us in this place now, but we didn't. Now that we have low funding, we still have a small window of opportunity to start to do things in such a way that when there is no funding, we can continue with our work. So I have here a few things that I want to mention. I like the way you use minimum, and I see minimum in two ways. One, the most basic information that we need, or the most basic information or requirements that we need, and then the minimum wordings and protocols so that we are not being verbose and so on. So in terms of what I would say is I've already talked about identifying focal points, not just in our organizations, but in the communities. And when it comes to communities, we need to be very, very careful because we must have rigorous community engagement, because we may appoint someone who is a perpetrator to be our focal point. Because normally, if you go to community engagement and you don't do it well, you see that the dominant people dominate discussions. And when they're choosing someone to be a focal point in the community, you may nominate someone who is a perpetrator, an abuser, and therefore you risk appointing the wrong person. So there must be the first thing we need to do is identify the focal point, particularly the community one, and then provide rigorous training for them. It doesn't cost much to do training. We can develop pictorial issues. We can work in a local way. We can just talk to them by phone. We can visit them. We can create opportunities to just engage with them. We don't need money to do that. Then number two, we have to make sure that we have a good response protocol. Response protocol that can be brief, culturally relevant, and that can be used even by people who are not formally literate. So pictorials, audio visuals, and so on can be used in those locations. Then the third thing we can do is where we train the people to screen, document, or to refer people. So we're talking about minimum documentation already. We've talked about confidentiality because people are afraid of stigma and shame. And then referrals, it should be done as quickly as possible, which brings us to the fact that we need to be coordinated amongst ourselves as partners. There must be joint coordination so that whatever is happening, whether it is capacity development, whether it is updating the minimum standards on a regular basis. In fact, in high-risk areas, the minimum standards, the protocols, everything must be done very frequently because things are changing, dynamic. So we must, it's not just to look for time to meet once in a while, but it must be in some locations, even monthly, so that you look at the protocol that you have and update them. And it doesn't cost much. We can do it over the phone. We can do it on WhatsApp and so on. Then we need to also look for local redress. We don't have to go to court. We can, if a community is really committed and we really help those communities, they can develop mechanisms for redress that doesn't have to go to court. I remember before this Hada farmer got very bad, in those days, there was no court, there was no police. You just bring the leader of the Fulanis, bring the leader of the community, bring the farmer, bring the Hada, you discuss, this is what has been, this is part of my farm that has been destroyed. This is how much it will cost. You agree. You say, oh no, this is not reasonable. Oh, this is the right cost, and then the Hada pays. To go to the court here, can we find a way to address it? Of course, there are instances where it has to go to court. It has to go to law enforcement. But if we're talking about prevention, then we have to start from community resources, community legal, not legal maybe, but community redress mechanisms that do not have to involve the redress. So that, for me, just to reiterate, identify and train focal points. But my focus is on the community focal points. Then use a good response protocol that is easy to understand by communities, that you can post in one page. It doesn't have to, if you have response protocol in 2 pages, it's too much. Just 1 page, you can paste it in a confidential area. You can make it in pictures so that the responder comes and easy to read, easy to understand, easy to dispense. Then when you are screening and documenting, make sure you have the minimum one. And then when you are referring, make sure you are referring through your coordination of partners. And the coordination of partners must always update the protocols. If you are in Abuja or Lagos, but if you are in Damasak, you meet monthly and then see, have there been any change? When you are using it, was this one useful? If it's not useful, you remove it, add another one on a regular basis, and then get your reporting channels clearly, appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zakama. I have kept us for long enough, and I believe that this is an ongoing conversation because it is it's something it's almost a new way of approaching gender-based violence. But what is the one minimum or two minimum that must be there? And I feel like we have said it. I think that if I were to ask Dr. Hamza and Honorable Commissioner, the NVRS as we have it or as we are trying to craft it, is it something that is scalable? Is it something that can be adopted and scalable? Because it's only it's only minimum can be scalable. So is it something that is that is adoptable and scalable at the very lowest levels of society?
Yes,
Dr. Han.
I think yes, I think it is. It is scalable and adaptable because we are advocating for involving the community members. And once they are involved and fully educated on that, they will key in and they'll take ownership. Once they take ownership and situate themselves within the solution, then adaptation becomes natural. So it is scalable and it is adaptable. It depends on the approach to the community so that we get their buy-in. Once they understand, once they have adequate education, they will be able to adjust and then accept it. Yes.
Thank you. Honorable Commissioner.
Well, I want to lend my voice to that it is possible, it is doable. There's no perfect system. The Nigerian constitution is still being amended. The Electoral Act has just been amended. But we need something to work with. We need something to run with. We need something on ground, the basics that we can use to work. Then we can continue to, amend, we can continue to look at it. How far have we come? Is it working? What can we add to it? But there is need to start to put something on ground. So it is, of course.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you very much. I don't know if Dr. Kemi is still here. She's okay. She said she had to go off for another meeting. It was really just a conversation between stakeholders to test to to test this idea that Athena has come up with, and Athena hopes that they can create an MVRS hall where all of the stakeholders can come together and adopt or validate, and then we can now take it out, share it with community facing institutions on the ways that they can report and prevent gender-based violence. I promised that this would not last more than 70 minutes, and I have broken my own promise. And so I want to start to wind down by thanking all of our panelists. But this is what happens next, because we're not done. Within the next 72 hours, we're going to share this NVRS document with you. And then we'll also publish, based on the NVRS, we're also going to publish a pathway to safety resource sheet that we will share with all of our particular panelists, and of course today's communique. And I'm a researcher, so I consider all the people I've spoken to today as my resource people for continued work, especially within Athena. So with all of your permissions, you are Athena partners, and you'll be hearing from me within the next 72 hours. Dr. Zakama, I am truly honored for your participation, as well as the rest of us women. I'm sorry if I'm paying too much attention to him, but very rarely do you see man want to come and talk on this, especially the area that we are going. It requires a lot of passion and true interest. And so on behalf of all the other women, I thank you. I also thank all the other participants. Honorable Commissioner, I am so grateful for your acceptance to come on here. Dr. Hamza, thank you very much. I was very, very insistent that I needed someone from the Muslim Women Association, and just a letter, you agreed to come on here. I am grateful. Thank you so much. I will send out a communique as well as the NVRS document that we all worked on within 72 hours, and I hope for continued engagement. We can just put on a camera picture of the participants. Dr. Hamza, if you can, if you don't mind, Dr. Hamza,
Yes.
and then also Honorable Commissioner. I don't know if we lost her.
I am here. I'm here. I don't know if you can see me, but I'm
Okay,
here.
she's here. If we can get a group picture, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We will take a group picture live, but something to commemorate, and we have taken the picture. Thank you so much for your participation, and you will receive correspondence. Yes. We got
Thank you.
we've got the picture, and you will receive correspondence from me within 72 hours. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you. Bye-bye.
Yes.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
sir.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.